Hi everybody, welcome to Living La Vita Loco podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. And my name is Fazz.
And I'm back.
Yeah, Rich is back.
I'm back, and now you sound like shit.
Yeah, don't. You can't make me laugh during these podcasts that we're going to be recording.
No, I will treat it with the solemnity that it deserves.
got like some goo in my lungs. I don't know what it is, but like, you know, it's like probably radioactive stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm probably going to be a superhero soon.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, probably. We're back. And I'm really glad that we're back because the last podcasts were shit.
Oh, fucking weird, weren't they? They were weird. I'm just glad that I haven't been fired for my views on Lord of the Rings.
Can you get fired from this podcast?
No.
No.
That's the beauty of it. And I'm willing to die on this hill as well.
Yeah. I will be fired for this podcast. I wouldn't fire you. Like, isn't that okay? I don't want to get into it or anything particularly, but like, you know, it's like, you know, it's fine. It's not, you know, it hasn't damaged anything. I don't think so. I honestly, like, it's a bit weird with Lord of the Rings because whilst I am absolutely infatuated with it, I think probably hopefully what came through the podcast was that a lot of that is from the feeling around it in terms of like that is not meant to be a innuendo about the canoodling I was doing.
It's all right, we're already here.
Yeah,
it's too late.
But like, you know,
Genie's out of that bottle.
The age I was at and stuff, but it seems it's weird that you were at a similar age and it just didn't click. I guess so. You know, it's like you said, it was boring and arduous. Which
to
was,
be honest, like, I can't even really recall watching it at the cinema or anything like that.
That's wild.
Like, so I don't have any like nostalgia for it really. Yeah. I mean, I must have seen one of them at the cinema, and like credit where credit's due. Like I said, like you can't take anything away from the scale of the achievement and how it's probably made New Zealand look better than anything ever before or since. But like, you know, things like the fight at Helm's Deep and all that, when Gandalf charges down the hill and all that, you know, makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Like, the trilogy has its moments, don't get me wrong, but toss up between that and Indiana Jones, it's Dr. Jones all the way, baby.
And that's, I mean, and I wouldn't have asked the question if I didn't think that, you know, there would have been, certainly in my mind, you know, I guess, a challenge between the two. Like, yeah. And I absolutely love Indiana Jones as well. As a, you know, like I said, Ray's my favourite film. So, but you know, we're talking about we're grappling with each other here.
Hey,
we are.
I mean, not literally.
Yeah.
Figuratively grappling.
We're kind of grappling together. Sorry, that loud cough down the microphone there. You're gonna have to get. I don't care. You're gonna have to just deal with that this week, guys. Like, it is like, you know, there's nothing to be done about it. I'm really sorry. Yeah, so we're talking about grappling, and you know, and one of the things that we're going to come back to on these podcasts where we have a shared joy about something, I think. But this will be a bit of a different one, I feel, because when we've talked about maybe skateboarding or beer or American football, I feel like I've known quite a lot about those things in terms of around me. Whereas I feel like this is going to be a real adventure to
a voyage of discovery.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where I'm going with that one. About wrestling. Weirdly enough. And
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and probably a few different, like, you know, I guess different avenues around wrestling as well. And there's some rustling going on there. We've got some Sour Patch Kids on the patch tonight. In fact, while you're doing that, I'm going to get some too. Brought some in. And so because personally for me, wrestling is something I'm interested in, but don't divulge in really that often. And when I do, it's usually lo-fi, local, not even local, but the idea of local wrestling, not your WWE sort of, I guess, styled
pomp
wrestling.
And pageantry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I do find it really quite fascinating and exciting. So, should we have a little bit of a chat, like, sort of, I guess, about wrestling in general? Like, So that's Mankind sat there over there. Sat there over there. You know, that's who you look like. So,
funnily enough, I know you said about doing top 5 wrestlers and all that kind of stuff. Spoiler alert: Mick Foley is number 1 because I accidentally cosplay him so often.
Yeah. Like you're walking around with a sock on your hand, just sort of like,
doing finger guns at everybody, looking slightly confused. It's my default.
Oh. So, Mick Foley, tell me about your career. No, so, when have you enjoyed wrestling, and what do you enjoy about wrestling?
So, I used to watch it quite a lot when it was on like Channel 4 or 5, something like that. This would be like the dying days of the WCW and stuff like that.
Can you tell me what that time or era that is?
Oh, so that would be kind of mid to late 90s. So like, I think it was something awful like the WCW Nitro ones or something like that.
I've heard of that.
One of the lambasted ones. You know, it was something that kind of piqued my interest. And I'd played quite a few of the revered AKI or Aki Corporation wrestling games on the N64. So, like, they were kind of the first fighting games I ever really got into. If you could call them fighting games, I think you can. I've not gone back to one recently. But
I see two people fighting.
Yeah, exactly. There's meter management and stuff.
It's more real than real life wrestling.
Yeah. Because it's basically ballet with big burly blokes.
Yeah, exactly. That's fun.
And you know, like it was one of those things that it very quickly with me and my friends, like when we be around each other's houses or stuff like that, you know, you'd be having cushions off the sofa or like bits of mattress and stuff like that, flinging yourselves around and doing elbow drops off of someone's staircase and things like that.
Don't try this at home.
Don't try this at home.
Everybody tried it at home.
Did. And what was not even a turning point, but like around this time, I'd quite often be around my friend Andrew's house, and he had Sky. But this meant that we were able to watch like WWF, and it was like right in that Attitude Era and stuff like that. So it was like, I have to like put up with WCW at home, but I can go around to Andrew's and watch like proper wrestling and stuff like that. Yeah. And like it was that stuff that kind of grabbed me. Yeah. You know, the characters that surround it, and it's one of those things that like I'll have long patches of not really thinking about too much, and then I'll kind of dip my toes a little bit and be like, oh yeah, this is fun. I remember this. Or like you say about going to see like the local stuff, when we've been a couple of times in Leeds and all that kind of stuff. Or more recently, like I realised there was a distinct correlation between me watching a shit ton of videos about video games on YouTube and impulse buying a shit ton of video games. And so as a sort of attempt to help wean myself off of that, like watching a load of the WWE uploads and stuff like that, and like going through previous Royal Rumbles and things like that, have actually been like genuinely helpful.
It was really good as well for you, like during COVID, didn't you? So all you wanted to watch was just old wrestling.
Yeah, it was great. Just like bring me the 1992 Royal Rumble, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was great to like revisit a couple of like the older eras, but also fill in a load of gaps and watch stuff that I've not gone anywhere near, and just see how much it's changed and things like that. I think I'm at the kind of opposite end of the scale to you. Like I fucking love how ludicrous the WWE is, how like over the top, campy, ridiculous it is. Yeah. It is ballet. I don't care what anybody else says. It's gymnastics, and it's a shit ton of oil. But like, it's usually good for a giggle, but it's always entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive like. I saw that obviously the other day that they've joined with UFC under this new TKO. Yeah, and Vince McMahon is the CEO of that, and Dana White is like kind of like doing the UFC branch, and it's almost like I thought nowadays, certainly from my friendship groups and listening to people speak, I don't watch UFC, but I know a lot of my friends do. And I thought that was like the sort of preeminent sport now. But actually it sounds like you get more draw. Like it's almost like WWE is like bringing more people to UFC through the entertainment sort of branch or arm.
I could see that because like it's almost like the gateway drug.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because I can imagine that you would end up with a load of kids watching it, especially like it had a turn however many years ago now where like the programming would be like PG-13 rather than anything too hardcore and stuff like that. So like, long gone are the days where people were like quietly cutting themselves open with razor blades to pretend they were bleeding and stuff like that. And I could totally imagine that you would have people going like, oh yeah, tell me more about combat sports and things like that.
Makes sense.
So yeah.
Cool. I mean, like you said, it was opposite end of the scale in terms of, like, I do like the sort of ludicrous part of WWE, but like I guess I like to see real people doing it as well, like people that like like I'm like office clerk by day, but by night, like every Friday down in like Batley in West Yorkshire, I go and wrestle. That's great. That's wonderful. Like, I love the idea that it's just like this average Joe doing that, and like that's their calling really. But they know fine well they'll get paid like £30 a year from it or something. But just even almost like superhero putting on a mask like later on. It's great, like and I just love the idea that happens around you, and it's almost like when you say, oh, people say, oh, what are your hobbies? And I'll say, oh, I started doing a video game podcast with my friend, and it's like, oh, great. And he's like, what do you do? Oh, I'm an amateur wrestler. Like,
every Friday is a trip to Suplex City.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And that's like someone's life somewhere. Yeah. So, but yeah, I took a really weird step through WWE. I felt WWE at the time, and it was, I watched it. So we had Sky in our house now, which is really strange because we were very much like I guess working class, but like as in like well off enough to be able to afford Sky, obviously. But my mum and dad worked hard, and my dad loves rugby league, and that's when Sky picked up rugby league like literally like 1992 straight away, and it was like that's probably like the lifeblood of what rugby league is now, really. Like it wouldn't exist without Sky, and so he's always had it. I remember the other way when Sky Digital, and it was like, oh my, whoa, what is this? Like, this is a new thing.
Gonna need seatbelts for the sofa.
I mean, I still remember the Sky adverts of Bart Simpson playing a guitar and jumping off the Sky symbol, like before the Simpsons started, and it was like I remember the Chewits episode, like the Chewits advert before the Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1, Part 2, and you sat there on the edge of your sofa trying to find out who shot Mr. Burns. Maggie, fucking unbelievable. So yeah, it was. I watched wrestling when I was quite young, probably at the age of sort of 6 or 7, and so the new generation era was more for me. So Shawn Michaels, Bret Hitman Hart, British Bulldog, Razor Ramon, all those kind of people were more my kind of the wrestlers I certainly identify now in the WWF / now WWE. I need to stop just doing that. Just call it WWE. But then really strangely, my group of friends when I was growing up, I'd say most of them watched WWE and were into it. And I all of a sudden, like, I only really, like, I went round to their house. They would be watching it, but it didn't really kind of, like, sink into me as much. Like, I was, like, more into the games or doing wrestling with them and stuff. And it'd be, like, like, doing, like, the physical side of things or, like, say, physically playing a game. Whereas watching it, I was like, I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was probably more into watching round ball football and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, it's just sort of, like, it kind of fell out of me. So even though it's, I guess... from what I've read, certainly when we were like, I guess, researching a bit for the pod, the Attitude Era is, renowned as being the best era of wrestling ever, and Stone Cold and The Rock and things like that. I wasn't really super into it, but I was just very aware of it. So I knew all the wrestlers' kind of names and stuff, but I didn't really know all the MOs, I didn't know all the storylines, and I wasn't watching it on a weekly basis. I wasn't watching SmackDown or Raw or anything, but I would play the games and be around it enough to still find it entertaining, but I didn't feel like I had to be super into it. And then, like you said, like when I got a little bit older and just decided that I really wanted to go see something like local wrestling like around us, and we went to see Tidal Championship Wrestling in Leeds, and I know that UK wrestling exists in Batley, and I'd love to go there. That's like they've got a weekly one, they've got events on. I remember going on a bender in Newcastle with my friend Adam, where we started drinking at 10 a.m. with Wetherspoons, and it culminated 15 pints later in a wrestling match. Like it was like the O2 Academy at the time, and it was just. I can't believe how much I remembered from that. Like, I remembered a significant amount because I was just having a great time. Like, but yeah, like, there's really fun times when you kind of get into that. So, and then mainstream cinema and TV, just to kind of touch on these a little bit. One of my favourite films, The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. Yeah. That's such a good film. Like, I just love the storyline, and it just what these people put themselves through. And and I know it's obviously a fictional sort of story, but it seems to be one that is kind of rings a bit true, especially after watching like The Wrestlers on Netflix the other day. I watched the first couple of episodes of those Wrestlers, and that was like, is it Ohio Valley Championship Wrestling, and Al Snow. Runs it like he's the showrunner for it. And it's great. It's really wonderful, and it's like and you can tell it's stylized, but at the same time, like these are real people who are like it's their lifeblood. There's like one guy who looks like Leonard from The Big Bang Theory, and he's like his job's on the line, and these two like guys have come along to buy it, and they're putting all the money into it, but they're like the heels basically of the show. They're like, these guys don't understand wrestling, but they're paying the money, so we have to do what they want, and it just And the same storyline in a fictional way, even though it's based on, I guess, a true story in it a little bit, is Glow. I don't know if you watched that on Netflix as well. No, and that's like glamorous ladies of wrestling. And again, that was fictionalized, and I think that got cancelled after 3 series. But me and Sally watched all 3 series of that and loved it. And it's just a comedy drama wrestling. It was fun. You know what I mean? It was almost like a bit like a Desperate Housewives wrestling.
But fun's the word.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I think about wrestling and talk about it and all that kind of stuff, fun is the word that keeps coming up over and over and over again. And like as well, like it's one of those weird things where you're talking about ladies of wrestling and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, going back to a couple of the older wrestling games, it's weird how even in a relatively short space of time, and like certainly our lifetimes, how much it's changed.
Yeah.
And like how, women have gone from like arm candy at the side of the ring to occasionally maybe turning up to like bra and panties matches where people are just ogling them to actually doing the actual sport entertaining. And doing it really fucking well as well. Like, they're finally getting somewhere. And yet it still seems like it's not exactly equality.
No, but
it's really fucking weird.
Have you seen is it Fighting With My Family or Wrestling With My Family? I think it is that. I think it's Fighting With My Family.
One with Nick Frost and like about the wrestler from like Norwich or something.
Yeah, so Stephen Merchant, I think he directed it. I don't think he wrote it, and it's got The Rock in it, and Rock produces it, and like because like you say, they've got the female wrestler from Norwich who then goes to be in the WWE, and it's sort of again one of those based on a true story, but like most of it's true kind of thing. But that's a really great sort of like family entertainment film in the ilk of the WWE, where it's like it is kind of PG-13, but it has enough wrestling in there where you're like, and you can even imagine, like, probably not now at our age or anything like that, but like how somebody could be, have that dream and like go and do that and and even in this wrestlers documentary, it's on Netflix at the moment. There's a young woman in that who is 21 and she wants to be in the WWE, but she's like had. Her mum's been in jail and she's had drug problems and it's just like, but like she still dreams of being this wrestler in WWE and that's, it is like, for some people it's a way of life, like, but ultimately it is to provide fun. Like, they know that what they're doing is just entertaining people.
Putting on a show. And like, it shows, like, when you have people who are good at it and clearly enjoy it, and they'll just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going forever.
Yeah.
But as well, like, and I think that's what struck me more recently, going back and watching some stuff compared to when I was watching it as a kid, because as a kid, it's like, oh yeah, it's like play fighting, but like better.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I can definitely appreciate more the lengths each of those performers are going to put on a show, but also keep each other safe or as safe as possible.
Yeah.
And when you start to like watch it with a bit more of a critical eye and appreciate how, like, when it's on TV, some of the camera work and stuff like that, or like how a certain arm movement might actually make that awful looking drop probably quite safe.
Yeah.
And things like that. I'm finding it weirdly fascinating picking it apart. And there was a guy I used to go to university with who once upon a time took a load of wrestling classes and stuff like that, and was posting his progress on Facebook and things like that. It's like, awesome. Got like my first like I can't remember what was it, a suplex he did. There was one that he did that he was really chuffed about.
That's awesome,
and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's fun. Like there's a lot to it, a lot more than people give it credit for. I think
it's really interesting. You sort of, and I've never really said it out loud, but do you feel you kind of go through a change curve where you kind of go through, at least this slapstick sort of like fun, and it's like you say, fun play fighting, but then you probably go, oh, it's all just fake and stupid and stuff. Whereas actually, there's so much technical work to it.
So much that can go wrong still.
Yeah.
And like you kind of appreciate how fake it is, but how real they can make it and all that kind of stuff.
And in the end, the old backhand slap across the chest, it's always real.
Oh yeah, the chops.
Real.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like you fake certain things to make stuff like that possible.
I think I need that on my chest right now. Like, as in, just a quick chop just to get rid of the gunk.
No, so I think it's one of those weird things where like you have to get on board with it and kind of like embrace the artifice, the how fake it all is. And I think if you can buy into that, then you'll have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, cool. So we've talked about, I guess, mainstream wrestling in our lives. Should we talk a little bit about our experiences with the games on our handheld consoles, PSP, PS Vita? I'm interested. Are you all right going first? I'm interested to see
how the hell I do this.
It's been a while. Let's get back on the horse. No, just because your game's so different, and I guess then we'll round back to the more mainstream stuff, and then we can talk about our favourite wrestlers and things like that, can't we? So cool. you tell us about Guacamelee.
Guacamelee. So there is not much in the way of quote unquote proper wrestling games on Vita. So like none of the sort of SmackDown versus Raws or anything like that. I looked and I looked and I looked because I don't usually need much persuading to at least try a wrestling game, and I couldn't find anything that really would tick the proper wrestling box.
That's fucking crazy.
It's really weird. I can't explain it.
I'm going to sour patch up while you're talking.
Yeah, go for it. So, I scratched that particular itch by going back to the GameCube and playing like Day of Reckoning and stuff like that. Yeah. But Guacamelee, you are playing as a sort of supernatural luchador, I guess. And
always good.
It's kind of like a Metroidvania thing. So you go around, there's a map, you get given objectives, which are basically just go here and beat up this thing. But then you can unlock new abilities that you will both use in combat, but also for traversing the map and unlocking new sections of it. So it's all 2D. It is quite possibly one of my favourite games to look at and just watch in motion. Okay. You remember Disney's Hercules film? It really reminds me of that animation style. Yeah. It's very angular and very quick movement and then sort of pause, quick pause. Yeah. Which also kind of fits the combat because that was that's like a trope of like Hong Kong martial arts cinema. Like if you watch a kung fu fight, it'll be quick movement, pause, quick movement, pause. So it goes into a lot of detail, like of just getting the aesthetics of like combat and movement really, really crisp. Yeah. It's bright, it's colourful, it's got some great soundtrack. It got some great soundtrack. It's got a great soundtrack.
That was really fun. It got some great soundtrack.
But yeah, so you start off as some guy who has a name that I've totally forgotten. I should have written it down. I didn't.
That's just reminding me of that. Is it? What is the? Is it an Austin Powers joke or something. It's like, oh no, it's Wayne's World, where it's like, oh, the cream of some young guy.
It's Wayne's World. And you basically get called upon to save the, I think it's the president's daughter, who you knew as a child, and then she ended up
Mates.
you were friends together when you were trying to become a luchador and failed. And
it's just it's a trope. It's a massive trope.
You went for it, you failed.
Everyone knows that route.
It was too difficult. And then she ended up going off with someone else who, betrays her and all that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, she's back in town, and you're off to go and meet her because she remembers your childhood and is like, "Hey, we should catch up."
Angular, weird graphics.
Yeah.
You're trying to impress a girl.
Yeah.
Is this Parappa the Rapper? Are you playing Parappa the Rapper again? Weird kung fu fighting.
Does Parappa the Rapper start suplexing people or like using uppercuts? Or
It
anything like
suplex
that?
my feelings.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. But you go to meet up with her, and then a bunch of bads turn up. You end up getting killed, or at least ending up in the kind of land of the dead.
Okay.
And get hold of this luchador mask that turns you into a heroic luchador, and this is a kind of world that worships them almost literally. And there's a lot of great nods to like Mexico in the artwork and how it feels. There's a lot of great nods to like memes and other video games and all sorts. But above all, it just loves the whole luchador thing.
Yeah.
And it comes through. So you'll be going around, you'll be getting these new abilities and new moves by breaking statues, which is making this kind of goat man increasingly more annoyed, and all sorts of fun little nods like that. You've got side quests you can help people with, but the bulk of it will be just moving around and just fighting baddies as you go, right?
Okay.
And the combat and the abilities it gives you, it sort of adds a little bit more to it, adds a little bit more to it, adds a little bit more to it, but it all, at every turn, it all falls together so well. Like each of the combat encounters is so well put together that like you're using a new ability as part of that fight, but it all feels like a sensible progression. And then you kind of look back and you go like, shit, like I'm just I'm blazing through this and it looks awesome. But look how far I've come from just like punching and kicking. And you get to the stage where you're having to do like suplexes and headbutts and dodge rolls while also flicking manually between the land of the living and the land of the dead to get different platforms to show up, and then turn yourself into a chicken to fit through a gap, and then and so like you have all of these
trope.
It's such a trope, but it does get to the stage that occasionally some of the platforming can get a little bit frustrating because you have a lot of spinning plates to try and
that sounds like like a lot of difficulty.
but it's got pretty helpful checkpoints, and if you say fall off of the map or something like that, you'll just be put back on the platform you fell from when you started that jump. So like
helpful.
It is helpful, but at the same time means that you can restart really, really quickly on that same loop. So you'll get to a point where you're just doing the same set of jumps really quickly in really quick succession, and that's why it's frustrating, because you can do it, but the restart is so quick. Like you've got no the only chance of a break is turning around and going the other way, back the way you came from and doing something else for a bit, or sticking with it. But like it's rare that it gets to that point, and it all just hangs together really, really well. It's good fun to play. You've got various extra little like buffs you can get for like health and stamina and all that kind of stuff to help yourself along. If you want to go and find the really difficult bits of the map and really challenge yourself to unlock some extra bits, sure you can, but you don't necessarily have to. So yeah, like there's a lot of good stuff there. In fact, I've written fun. There you go. And yeah, It's got some great characters. There's a guy who lives under a bar who has a collection of barrels and he calls them all by name. So obviously you go in and start smashing them and he's like, no! And like for each of every single barrel has a name and has a different line of dialogue attached to it.
No.
And it's things like that just, it has so much charm. Like it is great how much it brings to the party. And I know, like, I've talked about quite a few games before where they've either released a sequel or updated it, and it's kind of superseded it.
Yeah.
So there is a sequel which I've not played, but for Guacamelee, there's a they called it something suitably ridiculous, like Super Turbo Championship Edition.
Yes.
On Switch.
I think you nailed that.
I think that is actually what it's called. Yeah. And that brings in like 4-player co-op and stuff like that, which
cool.
I could imagine would be a really, really fun time if you got the right people with you. But because I have that as well and did a quick comparison. From what I've seen, I don't think there's enough in that on its own to completely supersede this version on Vita. Like, you can go and play the Vita version and you are still like basically getting the full experience. It's just that the Switch version bolts on some more stuff.
I mean, how many games have we talked about or thought about reviewing in the future as well, like where it's become a Switch game? Like, it's almost like the Switch just kind of goes, oh, remember these, your best games that you used to have and stuff. We're going to add, like, like Lumines or Lumines? And it's just like, oh, we're going to add a little bit more and make it look a little bit sassier, or you just add a co-op mode. And it's like, we'll sell it again to you for 20 quid. And you're like, oh, yeah, I'll do that.
But, I mean, considering the other things that we've said before now about game preservation and stuff like that, I think, Switch is going to be one of the sort of flag bearers for, bring me your poor forgotten games and all that kind of stuff. Like with all that in mind, I think it's an easy 8 out of 10 for me. Yeah. This I very nearly gave it a 9. Yeah. But I was like, I think it's just a touch too frustrating sometimes. Okay. And I mean, full disclosure, within about an hour of playing it, I was like, no, easy 10. Easy 10.
Really?
And then the longer I played it, it was like, I should probably bump it down a little bit.
Then just go for a 9 in the middle of those then.
But it's...
I can never move you on a score. I've been trying for weeks. I'm like, just change it a little bit.
It is because of those frustrations of some of the platforming and things like that. And like, from some of the later combat as well, like, it can get a bit annoying because you get to the stage where, you have these enemies that are on a timer, so you have to take them out before you can take out other enemies that have certain shields, and they're actually in the land of the living and you're in the land of the dead, and you have to flick the switch and all this kind of stuff. And
that sounds really hard.
You kind of get into like it builds you up to it really, really well, and it trains you for it, but you still need to occasionally get to that kind of like Zen state with it, where you are one with the movement and the mechanics, and when it all comes together, it's great. It just, to look at it in motion is great, and to actually pull off some of this stuff is awesome. But to get there is quite difficult, which I imagine is largely what it's like being a luchador. Really,
yeah. I mean, it sounds. Your main character that you can't remember the name of, I'm a little bit annoyed.
Juan.
Yeah, well, okay, that's fine. How many? 2? Juan. Right. Anyway, I feel like a bit annoyed that he just seems to have the luchador life handed to him on a plate in the land of the dead, by the sound of things. So I know you're like, oh, he has to die to get it. But if he was really good enough in the first place, he would have just been a luchador in the land of the living.
I mean, to be honest with you, there may be bits of the plot I'm forgetting.
Okay.
I
like your version. I like to have a grump about this chap's lifestyle.
Well, I mean, considering how tricky some of it is, and like I think for some of the bits that I played, I think I was definitely helped by the fact that I've played it through already back in the day.
Yeah.
So like, I think some of the trial and error was less out of the equation, more out of the equation for me.
Yeah.
So I think weirdly the necessity for going in, learning it, training, I think is meant to be part of that character arc.
Yeah, okay. I get it.
Genuinely, for how the story is set up and what it's trying to do, I think that it's deliberate.
Yeah, that's fine, I guess. Okay. Well, I mean, you got an 8 out of 10, so you can't be upset about that. That's probably,
no.
come out of the Luchador life with an 8 out of 10 game review. That's not bad at all.
Putting it on the spreadsheet now. And
excellent. I always like seeing you spreadsheeting, whilst we pod. So I will take over at this point then, and we'll bring it back to what I was going to say, more realistic matters.
Actual wrestling.
Of Smackdown versus Raw 2007 on the PSP.
I nearly bought this on the Xbox 360 the other day, by the way. So please tell me more.
It is widely regarded as one of the best wrestling games in terms of, I guess, there's lots of different wrestling games from the WWE stable. I'm going to use that word because they use that word. And when when someone's like, "Oh, a stable," like a stable of boys or something like that, or a stable of men, or I was like, when I first sort of thought about that, I was like, why do you call it a stable? Yeah, no, I was like, and I get you get your horses come from a certain stable and things like that, but I don't like the thought of 6'5" muscly men all oiled up, sitting in a room filled with hay. It's just that's the only thing that comes to my mind, and it's fucked. All the hay would be stuck to them, and I don't know. Stable is a bad place for wrestlers to be in, oiled up, is all I'm saying, and I can't get it out of my fucking mind. Anyway, so yeah, the stable of these games. So THQ, Jax, Ukes. I think these are all the people that make
heavy hitters.
Yeah, I don't really know anything of those production companies apart from that I just see them pop up on the
wrestling games.
The wrestling games, yeah, exactly. And is it 2K? Do they do the wrestling games now?
Yeah.
I think they do the official license ones. So I'm not really sure what happened at that point. But there was certainly, there was SmackDown Know Your Role. They were a game. WWF Smackdowns. They were I guess a thing. And then you had No Mercy is considered to be from what I've seen, the best wrestling game. And had Warzone and things, and Attitude. There was lots of different names for lots of different WWF, WWE games.
I think it was different line for each console or something.
It must have. Yeah, it was, and No Mercy was the N64 version, wasn't it?
So the N64 ones didn't have a kind of consistent line. Because you had a WCW one that ran on the same engine and stuff like that, so it kind of flitted around. But I think by the time you get to SmackDown and the Raw games and stuff like that, I think it was I think Xbox and PS2 and GameCube had their different ones, because GameCube had Day of Reckoning.
Oh yeah,
and,
you said
WrestleMania
that, yeah.
and stuff like that. So
I mean, does it feel like it's been FIFA'd a little bit now? It's just
nowadays.
The 2K.
Yeah,
2K games.
So. Yeah,
I don't see many other. I saw
there's the AEW one.
I'm shrugging at you over the podcast here. Because I've never heard of it, so therefore, there you go.
But so for a long time, the 2K ones were the only game in town, and a lot of that started with the SmackDown versus Raw ones, because they all kind of merged into one, and all the consoles got the same thing.
All right, fair enough. Well, so this is the SmackDown versus Raw, I guess, era of these games, and and I can see why they're really quite well reviewed, and because there's a lot to them. So usually when I come to a PSP game, I find it's a slimmed down version of a game from the home consoles. This feels like it's just putting a home console game onto the PSP, and there's so much to it. So, I mean, I'm going to just totally refer to my notes about this in terms of the modes there were, because there was so much stuff, but there's the season mode, a GM mode, and a pay-per-view mode. So there's lots of, I guess, extensive period of time where you think, if you're super into your wrestling and you are happy to have however many matches you want, the amount of things that you can do is on the PSP is extensive. I was really shocked when I went onto this, because I hadn't played a wrestling game probably since these sort of eras. Well, in fact, before this, really. I haven't really played a wrestling game since 2003 or 2004 or something. And it's and then the creation mode, you can create a superstar, you can create an entrance, you can create a move set, you can create a different type of championship. you can create a Road to WrestleMania like sort of championship.
Good going for portable as
Do
well.
you know what I mean? There's so much stuff on there. This is before I even really got into it. I was just like kind of looking around, seeing what you could do, and I made my own wrestler and made my own championship and things, and just sort of like just messed around for the first sort of hour or two that I was playing on this game. So I was like, oh wow, this is like a multitude of options that I didn't expect to have in here. And if you're really into your wrestling, like that's great. I mean, at the time there was an online mode, so you could I think you could trade or get people into your championship, which is like really impressive for the PSP era. Like, you could actually sort of say, "Oh, you come and play in my championship." Like, isn't we'll play like a couple of matches. It was like I was like, that's great for the PSP. Like, it was so when we've spoken previously about matchmaking, sat in the back of your car from Metal Gear Solid or whatever. It's just like it is. It was impressive. The graphics. The immediate in-ring graphics were very good, but outside of the ring, even though there isn't a feature where you can get into a fight with people in the crowd looked like Parappa the Rapper people. Like, honestly, like I was shocked how dire the around the ring sort of like graphics were. It was ridiculous. No. It was insane. You just complete cookie cutter situation. Trying to, I guess, jump from a cage into sort of like these paper thin people, sort of like it just wasn't happening. The music, as I always find with wrestling, is brilliant. Like as in the music in the menus, the entrance music is completely loyal to what it was, but then the sound in the game, so the crowd sound. Again, this crowd's getting absolutely battered here by me, but they were shit. They were a bad crowd. They were paper thin, and they just exactly, and they literally just had one sound, which is just like every 2 seconds. It was like it didn't matter what you were doing. It's just like you could just both be stood there in the ring, or like a whole Royal Rumble, and no one's really moving around, and like. I find that really hard to do in my lungs at the moment.
Yearn for the "This is awesome" chant.
It's ridiculous. I'm trying to think of other things that I want to talk about this game, because in the main, technically a good wrestling game. Like it felt very easy to control. The only thing that was really annoying to me was the main set of controls initially. Your analog stick was only really used for taunts, and then when you got and when you get into like a leg lock, for example, or a grapple, that is in once you then launched it using the directional pad, you would then use your analog stick to not even like God of War style rotate it round or anything like that. It's just like press down with the analog stick now, and I'm like, I just pressed down with my directional pad. Now you're just making me use the analog stick because you had no other use for it.
It's there
initially. Exactly, yeah. Why didn't you just move around with it? I don't understand.
Because I'm glad you mentioned the controls, because I think I played a demo for this on the 360 recently, and I swear the controls were like dual sticks. So like you had for a lot of the grapples and stuff, you would need a right analog stick.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, does it control well?
I think that's why they were trying to use it, and that was almost how they ported it over, maybe. But in terms of just controls with what was available on the PSP, even if you didn't have that analog stick there, like actually it was absolutely fine. Yeah, nice. and it reacted really well for a game that is 15 years old. That is in, you could perform all your finishes pretty easy, that is, and it didn't seem too difficult to like be able to use on the PSP, whereas I thought, am I going to be able to get the full use of, feel like I'm actually playing a wrestling game? Yeah, never really missed a beat on that, which is good, yeah. And then the only couple of sort of, I guess like gripe I sort of had was that a lot of loading screens, again, which it just seems to be, standard of the era. It was just annoying that every time something happened, like literally every button click, loading screen. It was, how many times do I need to see Ric Flair like on this loading screen? Do you know what I mean?
Bloody question.
I was like, oh god, why are you loading again? Like,
go away, Rick.
Yeah,
retire already.
And those loading screens, like it would just be for sort of, I guess, like simple things like entrances. Like you kind of want the entrance certainly for a first few matches, you kind of want to see your wrestler enter.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I forgot the entrances were just like literally this fucking like ridiculous graphical mess, like moving down like with just the music on. It's like, and a different background. I always love in wrestling games where it's like pick your arena, and it's like Raw, SmackDown, whatever. It's like like Royal Rumble. It's just a different sort of background that you walk into, and I'm like, there's too many options sometimes. I'm but yeah, and then the storyline is a bit weird on the PSP because I do miss the days where it would be like, The Rock, and it'd be like, even though it'd just be text at the bottom of the screen, and he'd be like
still
talking.
wobbling around
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
locker room,
Yeah, just sort of like,
his finger
yeah. And then they'd spend extra graphics points on on his eyebrow. Like the only thing you could see on the screen would be The Rock's eyebrow. But yeah, it moves away from that to a bit of a sort of strange situation where you've got a smartphone where you get emails, but also there is a shared PC in the locker room, and again, all these stable of boys, that is all
crushed around this PC.
all like lathered up in oil, just trying to type on this PC. I'm like, there's so many hygiene issues with that.
That keyboard would be an absolute
blood, oil, like I don't even want to know about it.
Foley, have you left thumbtacks on the keyboard again? You fucking degenerate.
Not to make me laugh. Just out of spite, you bastard. But yeah, it's just like, it just didn't make any sense, especially when you had your smartphone there that you were getting emails on. But it was
imagine typing on that when you've got oily mitts.
Yeah. And it was like, so the storyline kind of, it lived through news stories that you could access on the PC, and then emails you got on your phone, which was okay. So, and it was quite good that it kind of tried to guide you as well. So it would be like, I think the very first fight I took I was Rey Mysterio, and it was The Undertaker, and I can't remember who it was now, and it was like, oh, you're the mystery referee, or you're a special referee, and it tells you in the email, it's like, oh, play it straight down the line, don't mess around with anybody, let the fight play out and stuff. But obviously, you're in the wrestling ring, you let your Rey Mysterio, you're not going to do that. You're just going to beat the shit out of both of them and then see who you pin first.
Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, so you're just there, like, you get an email later on, it'll be like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? You pissed this guy off now. So the storyline was still fun in so much that it was the classic WWE fare of, well, that's just a ridiculous thing that's just happened or whatever. But it was all done, I guess, through the weird means of the PC and email, but yeah, it was all right. It was it was serviceable. So yeah, I think that in terms of as a game and playing a game, it's the first time I've picked up a wrestling game in a long time, and I felt myself drawn in and able to play for a few hours and go, actually, like I feel like I want to get through a championship or play a Royal Rumble. And in terms of what you saw directly in the ring and how it felt and how it played, it was great. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, so it's just the bits around it made it. They all felt very dated.
So, to go back to what we were saying about it being like a kind of a gateway drug towards like your kind of UFCs and stuff like that. A thought just occurred to me that I think wrestling games might have been like my kind of gateway drug towards fighting games, quote unquote, proper.
Yeah.
Like, do you find that you would be more inclined to pick up something like that, having dabbled again with a wrestling game?
No. I don't know really. Like, I do want to, as a token of friendship, be a better arcade fighter. Like, I want to. There will be a podcast at some point where we play Street Fighter 2. I think
I'd be very comfortable with that.
I'm sure you would be. And I want to do that, but whether or not like it will thrill me like it thrills you, I don't know. And as we mentioned all the way back on, I think it was like episode 12 when we went to Slam Dunk, and you were talking about Street Fighter then, and you were saying that like you would say that was you pretty much up there as one of your favourite games ever, and I said at the time, I think I said I wouldn't challenge you about that, and I wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? Even if it wasn't something that I enjoyed, but I think that I'd enjoy you enjoying it more, probably, especially because you'd just be kicking my ass. So, but yeah, it does feel. I get what you mean, though. That is
Yeah.
like, certainly for yourself, it feels like that's probably the case.
Yeah, I think
it's
it
your
may...
first entry into those kind of things.
Yeah, I think it was the first time, like the stamina meters and stuff like that, I actually gave a damn about meter management, basically, which is kind of like a core thing. For,
I think I enjoyed this more than the Tekken Resurrection that I played in the PSP.
Okay, yeah.
So it felt like a more complete game.
Yeah.
It felt like it definitely benefited from the funding that comes with it being a licensed WWE game. Like, it felt like there was a lot.
Sense.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it felt like there was a lot to it. So a lot of modes, and so 8 out of 10 for me.
8 out of 10.
Which I didn't expect to find myself saying for a licensed sports game from the PSP. I found that most so far have been like, not as great, but that one I was like, I was well into it. So, so sticking with our little wrestling odyssey then.
Odyssey.
Yeah, we kind of talked about wanting to say what maybe our favourite wrestling games were, our favourite, and then also our favourite wrestling era and favourite wrestlers. So, do you have an answer for any of those three categories? It's like pointless. Like, it's just like, answer whichever one you want, and I will rebut.
So I could do games and wrestlers then.
Do it.
So
do it. No,
I used to love WCW, NWO Revenge, and No Mercy and stuff on the N64. But more recently, I find myself kind of being drawn to. I've got the it's Smackdown. Here Comes the Pain, I think, on the PS2.
Yeah.
That I've played a bit, and like I get why people liked it. And I do like dabbling with it, but it just doesn't grab me in the same way. Like, I want to be able to play a game where I'm kind of doing a light grapple or a heavy grapple and then choosing my move and all that kind of stuff. Which, again, I think ties back to what I was just saying about fighting games. Like, it just feels to me like there's a bit more, like, tactical depth to it. And that probably isn't the case. I'm probably just playing the Smackdown game wrong. But I just like to feel like I've got those options as I go and things like that. And
I think
I've got,
there is
manual counter buttons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the GameCube Day of Reckoning games fall into that kind of category. They're very much spiritual successor to like your kind of No Mercy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Similarly, like the Def Jam, Vendetta and stuff like that,
and Fight for New York. I've never really played in them, but I know that they're like obviously really well reviewed and quite hard to get hold of for cheap as well.
The No Mercy developers.
Oh right, I didn't know that.
It's
that
what
sense.
they did next, and it feels very, very similar, but at the same time, it's just a touch too cartoony for me. Which, considering what we've been talking about, feels fucking ridiculous saying.
It doesn't though. I get what you mean. Like from when I see the videos of it and stuff. Like I said, I've never played it, but I've seen videos and it does look cartoony.
And like the Fire Pro Wrestling games as well. I quite enjoy them. I've got quite a few of them floating around. Actually, I had one of those moments the other day where it's like, oh, I've got how many of them? Like, how have I done that? Over the years, I've just and I tell you what, for the various versions I've got, I think I've got about 4 versions of Fire Pro Wrestling games. I've never won a single match on any of them.
No,
ever.
Holy shit!
Like I know theoretically what I'm meant to be doing. I've never won a single match.
They are your Mount Olympus. You've got to climb those suckers.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to invest some serious time and actually like get good. And like I would like to get to know them better. But alas.
I thought you were gonna go like old Val Venus there, isn't it? Hello, ladies. Hello, Fire Pro Wrestling.
But then for actual wrestlers, real world wrestlers.
Oh, can I just say a couple of? I'm not as in the law as I said about wrestling games, but I just wanted to say probably my favourite WWF game is probably the WrestleMania arcade. Like, is in playing a national cabinet with arcade sticks. That is it's always like a lot of fun. And I remember doing that when I was a kid, like whenever there was one around, and just seeing it was almost like, I guess there would be on that size screen like almost like a 4 or 5 inch like Hulk Hogan or Macho Man. Like, is it just sort of like just a whole block of human? Like, is it trying to like jump on the turnbuckle? It was just a lot of fun. And another one is like a recent thing that I just wanted to talk about just dead quickly is a battle royale called Rumbleverse, where it's the same concept of all battle royales, but I can't remember how many people you get. I think you get like 75 people in this, and it's a 2-man team that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So me and Nath, who's been on the podcast before, we picked it up, and it's by the same developers of Fortnite, and we played it for like a week, because after about a week we discovered people had just become too good at it. It wasn't just like like you could just play Fortnite or Call of Duty and shoot a gun and be okay at it. It was like you had to learn the wrestling moves perfectly and all the power ups and stuff. And obviously, being a button basher, I was just getting leathered. And once people got you into a hold or were near you and they had the power ups and they were depleting your energy and power ups, once you were in their grasp, you were fucked. As in, there was no chance. So the first couple of days, I was like, this is a great game. Really good idea. Really awesome battle royale idea. As in, we're getting into it and stuff. But after about 3 or 4 days, the internet just was better than me by an extensive amount. So I just wanted to say that's out there. And if people like, wrestling or battle royals, they could try it. But, I mean, you better be fucking good at it.
I'll tell you what, I just thought of Saturday Night Slam Masters as well.
Oh yeah, I've seen that floating around on reviews and things. I've seen that's been quite well reviewed. Again, this is probably a bad podcast for me. I'm like, let's do a podcast about wrestling. I'm like, everyone else will know more than me. Great.
In that case, please comment.
Yeah. Go on then. So we've got a couple of minutes left. Let's talk about your favourite
top wrestlers.
So
the top of the list was easy, and it's when we get further down it gets bloody difficult. So number 1, Mick Foley, as mentioned.
Yeah.
My spirit animal.
Which could be possible, to be honest. I can imagine a
genuinely
match.
think we might be related.
I can imagine a match where Mick Foley comes as Rich Horsfield. It's like, oh my god, he's in the ring. It's Rich from that podcast thing.
Next, The Undertaker. Because The Undertaker. Number 3, Sting. First wrestler that I was genuinely a little bit obsessed with, and all that kind of stuff. When he, as soon as you see him sort of coming down from the rafters, baseball bat in hand, and stuff like that, when you're a kid, it's memorable.
Pretty badass. Yeah, cool.
Number 4, I've got Bray Wyatt. So this is a bit of a weird one. It's not necessarily for any in-ring antics, but when I had one of my more recent dalliances with learning about the latest in wrestling, kind of discovered Bray Wyatt and his character stuff, and thought, oh yeah, this is really cool, what he's doing. Yeah. And then I found out soon after he died in August that he'd passed away and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah, he was a couple of months older than me.
Yeah.
And especially for what he passed away with, and some of my own medical stuff recently, and knowing he was basically the same age and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of hit a bit harder. Yeah, it was really weird stuff to read. Are
you okay?
Oh yeah. But it was just that kind of I don't know. There was a kind of, it felt like a weird a new appreciation, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially it was the age thing more than anything else that kind of made that one hit home. My problem with this list is the number 5 spot. Mm-hmm. I've got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
we have
11.
About 2 minutes left on the podcast, so pick one.
So I'm going to go Kofi Kingston.
I don't know who or... No, I do know that is. I know the name, but I don't really know who that is.
Kofi Kingston's antics in the Royal Rumbles that I have watched recently are genuinely some of the most entertaining stuff I've seen
need to go away and watch it.
Go do some digging. But honourable mentions to everyone from China to Triple H for his theme tune, to British Bulldog, to Shawn Michaels, to Steve Austin, to...
I said 5.
Yeah, I know, but I've got an honourable mentions list as a mile long.
You've gone rogue, the heel of many wrestling matches.
I told you it was a difficult list.
I've got 75 seconds to put Shawn mine in, but then I am less Lord, as I've said before. So, and you've mentioned a couple already. Shawn Michaels, and a lot of mine come from the New Generation era. Mm-hmm. Anyway, The Undertaker, we've already mentioned, because The Undertaker. Yep. Bret Hitman Hart's my number 1.
Yeah,
I just fucking love Bret Hitman Hart. just absolutely, I don't know what it is, but definitely a man crush. It's just wonderful. And then Yokozuna, just because it's just so specialist in and he passed away as well at a young age as well in Liverpool of all places. I think they were on tour. Yeah, I think it was WWF on tour, and he passed away in a hotel room, sort of, from like an aneurysm, and it was like, but again, just something unique about the way that he would fight, and and that's cool that you can get that,
it draws you to him,
exactly, and different sort of sportsman entertainer, which is cool. And then and the last one I kind of include was Road Dogg, Jesse James. Now the reason for
that one I don't get.
Now the reason for that is because this is this era where like I had my friends and like they all watched wrestling and I didn't, and it was like, who do you want to be? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, you're gonna be Road Dogg, and I was like, who? But then I then became became Road Dogg when we were just wrestling.
Oh, that's incredible.
So yeah, we've got like 12 seconds left, Rich, before we have to put an advert or something in. So right, okay, let's just say bye.
Head there. Bye.
Bye.